Foreign ministers from NATO countries are gathered this week in Washington, and one of the allies, Turkey, has come under sharp criticism for its dealing with the alliance's principal adversary, Russia. In a moment, you'll see my interview with Turkey's foreign minister. But first, some background on an increasingly tense showdown between Turkey and the United States. It was all smiles last week as Turkey's foreign minister, Mevlut Çavuşoğlu, hosted his Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov, to reaffirm a major arms deal.
Biz bu anlaşmayı Rusya Federasyonu ile yaptık.
We've made this deal with the Russian Federation, and we will honor it. We bought it out of necessity. Turkey is in need of an air defense system.
But Turkey's decision to buy Russia's top-of-the-line S-400 surface-to-air missile system has angered Washington because of a big arms deal of its own. The U.S. is selling F-35 fighter jets to Turkey, a NATO ally, and fears Russia would gain technical access or insight into the state-of-the-art planes. This week, the Pentagon cut off planned F-35 deliveries to Ankara while offering the Turks an American alternative to the Russian missile.
I'm very confident in the Patriot proposal that we've delivered to Turkey.
Acting U.S. Defense Secretary Patrick Shanahan says if Turkey instead buys the U.S.-made Patriot air defense system, then problem solved.
I really think we'll resolve the situation because we're strategic partners. I expect we'll solve the problem so that they have the right defense equipment, both in terms of Patriots and F-35s.
But in Washington today at a NATO 70th anniversary event, Çavuşoğlu gave no ground and said the deal with Moscow would proceed. Vice President Mike Pence fired back in a speech to the NATO gathering.
Turkey must choose. Does it want to remain a critical partner of the most successful military alliance in the history of the world? Or does it want to risk the security of that partnership by making reckless decisions that undermine our alliance?
The verbal war over war machines is adding increased pressure to a relationship already rife with tension. Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has long condemned U.S. support for Syrian Kurdish forces in the fight against ISIS, arguing they are allied with Kurdish separatists inside Turkey. The foreign minister followed up today, again accusing the U.S. of supporting a direct threat to Turkey.
So we have been asking the United States to actually disengage with terrorist organization. But it seems that they still support this terrorist organization.
Meanwhile, local elections in Turkey this week showcased a different challenge to Erdogan. The opposition won control of Ankara and led in Istanbul's mayor's race. We explored most of this with Foreign Minister Çavuşoğlu earlier today. Minister Çavuşoğlu, very good to talk with you. Thank you for speaking with us.
Thank you for the invitation.
The United States, Turkey, longtime allies, but right now seem to be at an impasse. Your government has committed, it says, to buying the Russian air defense system, the S-400. However, Defense Secretary says he doesn't think this is going to happen, that instead you're going to buy an American defense system, the Patriot. Which is it?
Well, we really value our relations. We are not only NATO allies, but our partnership has been actually very successful in many areas in our region, in Afghanistan and in Europe as well. And now we have some outstanding issues. But now S-400 is another issue. We wish we could have both Patriots, I mean the batteries from United States, or other systems, defense systems from other allies. In last 10 years, we have tried, but we couldn't buy it from United States. And now there is a proposal, but still there is no guarantee that US will be able to sell them to Turkey. We are negotiating the conditions and the terms, that's fine, but even President Trump cannot assure us that he will get the green light from the Congress.
But do you understand why the U.S. opposes Turkey having the S-400, worried about the Russian defense authorities having access to American defense technology.
Well, this system will not see F-35s or other NATO systems as an enemy. And we will make sure that it will not happen. And we propose United States to form a technical working group and to examine this. This is our proposal. So we had to buy S-400s, and it was an urgent need. It was another choice for us, but we had to buy it.
They're already purchased.
Yeah, and it's a done deal.
But are you saying, regardless of what happens with the Patriot, the American system, Turkey is committed to deploy the S-400, the Russian
This is a done deal. We already
Committed to deploy.
We purchased this, and it has to become.
It has
to be in Turkey.
deployed.
That is the reason that we spent a lot of money for this.
Even at the risk of a serious split with the United States over this.
Well, why we should have serious split? And Turkey is a NATO ally, and Secretary General of NATO made it very clear that any ally can purchase any system from other countries than allies. And there are some other NATO allies which have S-300s and also Russian systems. So why it is that big problem that Turkey had to buy these S-400s, because she couldn't buy them from its allies, particularly mainly from the United States. So you don't want to sell it to Turkey, or you cannot sell them to Turkey, and then you insist Turkey not to buy from anybody else either. So this is actually unacceptable for us.
The U.S. sees this as a direct threat to U.S. national security.
Well, it is not a direct threat neither to Turkey's nor to any other allies' national security.
How can you be
This
sure?
will be fully under control of Turkey, this system.
So the U.S. should trust.
Right.
So much to ask you about. You mentioned Syria. It was not very long ago that your President Erdogan said keeping Mr. Assad in power in Syria was unacceptable. Now it looks as if Mr. Assad is staying in power. Is Turkey prepared to accept this?
Well, we still believe that he cannot unite the country. This is the problem.
Meanwhile, the U.S., as you know, President Trump saying the U.S. is pulling troops out except for a very small group. Do you understand what the U.S. overall strategy is now in Syria?
Well, it seems that there is no clear strategy yet. There are some decisions of Trump to withdraw, and different statements are coming from different institutions.
Where are the different statements coming from?
From President himself, from different departments, from military, from CENTCOM, military on the ground. This is what we see from Turkey, actually. Probably you see better here in the United States.
So how do you know who knows what's going on?
Well, that's why we have now a task force. We brought military and intelligence and the Minister of Foreign Affairs of both sides to coordinate it.
It's well known what Turkey's government believes about the YPG operating in northern Syria. Is your government at this point planning to attack? Is your posture that they cannot stay there, that they should be attacked and removed at some point?
Well, we are prepared for that option as well. But since Trump told Erdogan, President Erdogan, that U.S. is withdrawing from Syria, we actually started working together, coordinating the things together.
Just a few other things I want to ask you about quickly. Number one is the journalist Jamal Khashoggi, murdered at the Saudi consul in Istanbul. Why does your government not, and do you plan to release the audio recording, which you have, of the murder, and any other information you have about him?
Well, any information is no longer, a secret. And we have shared all these information with everybody, including CIA. It is up to, of course, now the chief prosecutor to make it public or not. But at this stage, I think...
In Saudi Arabia, but Why
no,
does
in
not?
Turkey, I mean, it is up to our chief prosecutor in Istanbul, actually, to give such decisions. And there are still, unanswered questions, and including whereabouts of the Khashoggi's body and the alleged local collaborators, as well as masterminds. And we shared also all the findings on our side with Saudi chief prosecutor, but in return, we couldn't get anything from them.
So you're saying the Saudis are holding this up?
Right.
Question about the Trump administration's proposal for Israeli-Palestinian peace, a Middle East peace plan. Do you have a view of this?
Well, we don't have a view because until today, there is no peace plan. This is for sure. And we are not sure whether there will be a peace plan or not. Everybody is quite skeptical on this because of the decision that United States has taken so far. And decision to move the embassy to Jerusalem actually was a kind of turning point. So the U.S., everybody believes that U.S. is no longer a balanced country or objective. And to initiate a peace plan, first you have to be an honest broker. And the last decision, for instance, of the Trump again, to recognize the Golan Heights as the territory of Israel is another actually decision that everybody has been very much concerned. So U.S. first has to be an honest broker to initiate a peace plan on Middle East issue.
Minister Çavuşoğlu, thank you very much for talking with us.
Thank you.
As you just heard, the foreign minister said Turkey was prepared to take action against the Kurds in northeastern Syria, the YPG. Late today, the State Department said Secretary of State Pompeo warned Çavuşoğlu this afternoon in Washington that any unilateral Turkish military action in Syria would hold, quote, potentially devastating consequences.